Book 9, Chapter 11. What answer I made her unto these things I remember not. For scarce 5 days after, or not much more, she fell sick of a fever, and in that sickness one day she fell into a swoon, and was for a while withdrawn from these visible things. We hastened round her, but she was soon brought back to her senses, and looking on me and my brother standing by her, said to us inquiringly, Where was I? And then looking fixedly on us, with grief amazed, Here, saith she, shall you bury your mother. I held my peace and refrained weeping, but my brother spake something, wishing for her, as the happier lot, that she might die not in a strange place, but in her own land. Whereat she with anxious look checked him with her eyes, for that he still savoured such things, and then looking upon me, Behold, saith she, what he saith. And soon after to us both, Lay, saith she, this body anywhere. Let not the care for that any way disquiet you. This only I request, that you would remember me at the Lord's altar, wherever you be. And having delivered this sentiment, in what words she could, she held her peace, being exercised by her growing sickness. But I, considering thy gifts, thou unseen God, which thou instillest into the hearts of thy faithful ones, whence wondrous fruits do spring, did rejoice and give thanks to thee, recalling what I before knew, how careful and anxious she had ever been as to her place of burial, which she had provided and prepared for herself by the body of her husband. For because they had lived in great harmony together, she also wished, so little can the human mind embrace things divine, to have this addition to that happiness, and to have it remembered among men, that after her pilgrimage beyond the seas, what was earthly of this united pair had been permitted to be united beneath the same earth. But when this emptiness had through the fullness of thy goodness begun to cease in her heart, I knew not, and rejoiced admiring that she had so disclosed to me, though indeed in that our discourse also in the window, when she had said, What do I hear any longer? There appeared no desire of dying in her own country. I heard afterwards also, that when we were now at Ostia, she with a mother's confidence, when I was absent, one day discoursed with certain of my friends about the contempt of this life, and the blessing of death. And when they were amazed at such courage which thou hast given to a woman, and asked, whether she were not afraid to leave her body so far from her own city, she replied, Nothing is far to God, nor was it to be feared, lest at the end of the world he should not recognize whence he were to raise me up. On the 9th day then of her sickness, and the 56th year of her age, and the 33 of mine, was that religious and holy soul freed from the body. Chapter 12. I closed her eyes, and there flowed withal a mighty sorrow into my heart, which was overflowing into tears. Mine eyes at the same time, by the violent command of my mind, drank up their fountain wholly dry, and woe was me in such a strife. But when she breathed her last, the boy Adeodatus burst out into a loud lament, then, checked by us all, held his peace. In like manner also a childish feeling in me, which was, through my heart's youthful voice, finding its vent in weeping, was checked and silenced. For we thought it not fitting to solemnize that funeral with tearful lament and groanings, for thereby do they for the most part express grief for the departed, as though unhappy or altogether dead, whereas she was neither unhappy in her death nor altogether dead. Of this we were assured on good grounds, the testimony of her good conversation, and her faith unfeigned. What then was it which did grievously pain me within, but a fresh wound wrought through the sudden wrench of that most sweet and dear custom of living together? I joyed indeed in her testimony, when, in that her last sickness, mingling her endearments with my acts of duty, she called me dutiful, and unmentioned, with great affection of love, that she never had heard any harsh or reproachful sound uttered by my mouth against her. But yet, O my God, who madest us, what comparison is there betwixt that honour that I paid to her, and her slavery for me? But then forsaken of so great comfort in her, my soul was wounded, and that life rent asunder as it were, which of hers and mine together had been made but one. The boy then being stilled from weeping, Euodias took up the psalter and began to sing, our whole house answering him, the psalm, I will sing of mercy and judgment to thee, O Lord. But hearing what we were doing, many brethren and religious women came together, and whilst they, whose office it was, made ready for the burial, as the manner is, I, in that part of the house where I might properly, together with those who thought not fit to leave me, discoursed upon something fitting the time, and by this balm of truth assuaged that torment, known to thee, they unknowing and listening intently, and conceiving me to be without all sense of sorrow. But in thine ears were none of them heard. I blamed the weakness of my feelings, and refrained my flood of grief, which gave way a little unto me, but again came as with a tide, yet not so as to burst out into tears, nor to a change of countenance. Still I knew keeping down my heart, and being very much displeased, that these human things had such power over me, which in the due order and appointment of our natural condition must needs come to pass, with a new grief I grieved for my grief, and was thus worn by a double sorrow. And behold, the corpse was carried to the burial. We went and returned without tears, for neither in those prayers which we poured forth unto thee, when the sacrifice of our ransom was offered for her, when now the corpse was by the grave's side, as the manner there is, previous to its being laid therein, did I weep even during those prayers. Yet was I the whole day in secret heavily sad, and with troubled mind prayed thee, as I could, to heal my sorrow, yet thou didst not, impressing, I believe, upon my memory by this one instance, how strong is the bond of all habit, even upon a soul which now feeds upon no deceiving word. It seemed also good to me to go and bathe, having heard that the bath had its name, balneum, from the Greek bathia for that it drives sadness from the mind. And this also I confess unto thy mercy, Father of the fatherless, that I bathed and was the same as before I bathed. For the bitterness of sorrow could not exude out of my heart. Then I slept, and woke up again, and found my grief not a little softened. And as I was alone in my bed, I remembered those true verses of thy Ambrose, for thou art the Maker of all, the Lord, and Ruler of the height, who, robbing day in light, hast poured soft slumbers o'er the night, that to our limbs the power of toil may be renewed, and hearts be raised that sink and cower, and sorrows be subdued. And then, little by little, I recovered my former thoughts of thy handmaid, her holy conversation towards thee, her holy tenderness and observance towards us, whereof I was suddenly deprived. And I was minded to weep in thy sight, for her and for myself, in her behalf and in mine own. And I gave way to the tears which I before restrained, to overflow as much as they desired, reposing my heart upon them, and found rest in them, for it was in thy ears, not in those of man, who would have scornfully interpreted my weeping. And now, Lord, in writing I confess it unto thee. Read it who will, and interpret it how he will, and if he finds sin therein, that I wept my mother for a small portion of an hour, the mother who for the time was dead to mine eyes, who had for many years wept for me, that I might live in thine eyes. Let him not deride me, but rather, if he be one of large charity, let him weep himself for my sins unto thee, the Father of all the brethren of thy Christ. Chapter 13. But now, with a heart cured of that wound, wherein it might seem blameworthy for an earthly feeling, I pour out unto thee, our God, in behalf of that thy handmaid, a far different kind of tears, flowing from a spirit shaken by the thoughts of the dangers of every soul that dieth in Adam. And although she, having been quickened in Christ, even before her release from the flesh, had lived to the praise of thy name for her faith and conversation, yet dare I not say, that from what time thou regeneratest her by baptism, no word issued from her mouth against thy commandment. Thy Son, the truth, hath said, Whoever shall say unto his brother, Thou fool, shall be in danger of hell fire. And woe be even unto the commendable life of men, if, laying aside mercy, they should examine it. But because thou art not extreme in inquiring after sins, we confidently hope to find some place with thee. But whosoever reckons up his real merits to thee, what reckons he up to thee, but thine own gifts? O that men would know themselves to be men, and that he that glorieth would glory in the Lord. I therefore, O my praise and my life, God of my heart, laying aside for a while her good deeds, for which I give thanks to thee with joy, do now beseech thee for the sins of my mother. Hearken unto me, I entreat thee, by the medicine of our wounds, who hung upon the tree, and now sitting at thy right hand maketh intercession to thee for us. I know that she dealt mercifully, and from her heart forgave her debtors their debts. Do they also forgive her debts, whatever she may have contracted in so many years, since the water of salvation? Forgive her, Lord. Forgive, I beseech thee. Enter not into judgment with her. Let thy mercy be exalted above thy justice, since thy words are true, and thou hast promised mercy unto the merciful, which thou gavest them to be, who wilt have mercy upon whom thou wilt have mercy, and wilt have compassion on whom thou hast compassion. And, I believe, thou hast already done what I ask. But accept, O Lord, the freewill offerings of my mouth. For she, the day of her dissolution now at hand, took no thought to have her body sumptuously wound up, or embalmed with spices, nor desired she a choice monument, or to be buried in her own land. These things she enjoined us not, but desired only to have her name commemorated at thy altar, which she had served without intermission of one day, whence she knew that holy sacrifice to be dispensed, by which the handwriting that was against us is blotted out, through which the enemy was triumphed over, who summing up our offences and seeking what lay to our charge, found nothing in him, in whom we conquer. Who shall restore to him the innocent blood? Who repay him the price wherewith he bought us, and so take us from him? Unto the sacrament of which our ransom, thy handmaid bound her soul by the bond of faith. Let none sever her from thy protection. Let neither the lion nor the dragon impose himself by force or fraud. For she will not answer that she owes nothing, lest she be convicted and seized by the crafty accuser, but she will answer that her sins are forgiven her by him to whom none can repay that price which he, who owed nothing, paid for us. May she then rest in peace with the husband, before and after whom she had never any, whom she obeyed, with patience bringing forth fruit unto thee, that she might win him also unto thee. And inspire, O Lord my God, inspire thy servants my brethren, thy sons my masters, whom with voice and heart I pen serve, so many as shall read these confessions, may at thy altar remember Monica, thy handmaid, with Patricius, her sometimes husband, by whose bodies thou broughtest me into this life, how I know not. May they with devout affection remember my parents in this transitory light, my brethren under thee our Father in the Catholic Mother, and my fellow citizens in that eternal Jerusalem, which thy pilgrim people sigheth after from their exodus, even unto their return thither. That so, my mother's last request of me, may through my confessions, more than through my prayers, be, through the prayers of many, more abundantly fulfilled in her. End of Book 9.